So, product backlog refinement in Scrum is where the Scrum team gets that knowledge acquisition. The product owner is busy talking with the developers. And developer, just for those of you who may not speak Scrum yet, doesn't mean software developer. It means anybody on the team that's doing work. We just call them developers, product developers, anybody doing anything for the product. So product owner and developers are talking to each other. And if the product owner invites some subject matter experts or some stakeholders along to help answer questions, that's okay. But this is a roll up your sleeves working conversation. And it's through those interactions, it's through that back and forth, that question and answer and interaction with each other that the knowledge acquisition happens. And so people write down for themselves or capture for themselves shared understanding. Handing off documents to one another does not promote shared understanding. So we want to make sure that we're capturing the things that we've agreed to with one another. I'm running into lots of prescriptive Scrum mastery out there in the world of work, where some Scrum masters right out of the gate will say, oh, well, we just need a definition of ready. We just need a definition of ready checklist to hand to the product owner. What? Why can't the developers talk to the product owner, which is kind of the whole point? And there is no such thing as definition of ready in the Scrum guide. There's a definition of done. And the way that we find out whether we agree or not is by talking to each other. So more and more, I just see a lot of people out there in the world of work going to enormous lengths and trouble to avoid talking to each other, to avoid those interactions, which is kind of the whole point. And especially with Scrum, which is what I'm focusing on here, but you could draw your attention back to Agile and look at the Agile manifesto where it says individuals and interactions over processes and tools. Doesn't say start with a prescriptive process or prescriptive tools. So the Scrum guide is pretty minimally prescriptive. And I get that people will say, well, doesn't that leave a lot to interpretation because it is also the written word? Yep. Which is why we talk a lot about what that written word means to your organization. So think of those things in the Scrum guide as our guidelines, our guardrails. They aren't like these prescriptive rules. So some will struggle with what that means in their context, but that's the whole point. The good news is you get to talk to each other, whether you're in an environment where you're building robotic devices or whether you're in an environment where we build software, or maybe you're in a services organization like mine. Of course, those contexts are completely different. So we want to talk to each other, and the Scrum Master is the conduit to make that conversation happen. And he or she can help neutrally facilitate those conversations, but they don't prescribe prescriptive practices that actually avoid the conversation, because that leads to lots of misunderstanding. So we like to say that fail means first attempt in learning on our team. Failure is sometimes looked at as a bad thing, or we go to really great lengths in our organization to take people's learning opportunity away. No, 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 don't do it that way. No, no, I want you to do it like this. People are experiential learners. So failure is the way we are wired to learn. We would never have learned to walk as human beings if, as a toddler, we were handed some document and told, read up, you got to walk tomorrow. It doesn't work that way. The only way we learn to walk is by trial and error. The only way we learn to talk is by trial and error, our first attempt in learning. So human beings are experiential learners, and Scrum Masters are supposed to facilitate conversations, not take that learning opportunity away. Here, I'll just do it for you. I'll just write this down. Well, wait a minute. Then the people who are supposed to understand the product or understand how to build the product aren't doing the knowledge acquisition. we're creating a condition called learned helplessness because they fall into the trap then of not only not knowing what they need to do about the product, but not understanding how to get that knowledge acquisition for themselves. I mean, Scrum Masters, aren't you ever going to take a break? Aren't you going to be out on vacation once in a while? Or what if you call in sick? So we don't take people's learning opportunities away from them. That's not having a servant leadership mindset. That's not understanding what the Scrum Master's role is. And when we talk about coaching, getting the Scrum team to work together, not taking their ball away. You know, if you watch the American game of football or you watch baseball or you watch basketball, any sport out there, when do you see a coach run out onto the court, run out onto the field of play and rip the ball out of the player's hands? It's like, oh, I can do that. I got it. That's not coaching. So coaches are more about making observations and giving feedback. So developers on a Scrum team who'll be doing the work are also responsible for sizing that work. There are so many Scrum Masters out there who during a sizing exercise will say, let's just average it and move on. What? Then we skipped the whole discussion, which is the point, by the way. So we don't want to do that. We want to enable the discussion. We want to coach the team on having some sort of working agreement or maybe coming to consensus after the discussion. But that good discussion is what promotes that knowledge transfer or gets people to learn not only from each other, but to understand one another and verify that they understand one another. We don't want people who are building the product to be the ones knowing the least about that product.